There is a question underneath the question. When you decide to post something, when you open the app and start typing or choosing a photo or drafting a caption, the surface question is, what do I want to share today? But underneath that, quietly running in the background, is a different question entirely, and most women never stop long enough to hear it. The question is this: am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing this because I am afraid of what happens if I do not? That distinction, expression versus safety, sounds simple, but pulling it apart honestly, sitting with it without flinching, is one of the most revealing things you can do for yourself, because the answer changes everything. It changes why you post, what you post, how you feel before and after, and most importantly, what you are actually building when you invest your time and emotional energy into a digital presence. If you are posting from expression, you are creating.
If you are posting from safety, you are performing. And the performance, however polished, however successful by external metrics, will always cost you more than it gives back. This episode is about learning to tell the difference, not to judge yourself for where you currently are, but to understand it clearly enough to choose differently if you want to. And to do that, we need to go somewhere most social media conversations refuse to go. We need to talk about what happens to people, and specifically to women, when they grow up in environments where their acceptance was conditional. Conditional acceptance is not always dramatic. It does not require an abusive childhood or visible trauma to leave a mark. Conditional acceptance looks like parents who were most warm and engaged when you performed well, and subtly withdrawn or disappointed when you did not. It looks like a family where keeping the peace mattered more than speaking honestly, where the unspoken rule was that your emotions were acceptable only when they were pleasant or convenient. It looks like a school environment where your social value was tightly linked to how you looked, how funny you were, how agreeable, how likable. It looks like any environment where the message, spoken or unspoken, was that you are loved and accepted when you present a version of yourself that meets a certain standard, and that love and acceptance are at risk when you do not. When a child or a young woman grows up absorbing this message, her nervous system learns a specific and deeply practical lesson. It learns that the version of yourself that is acceptable to others is safer than the version that is fully real. It learns that authenticity carries risk and performance provides protection. And this learning does not stay intellectual. It gets wired into the body. It becomes reflexive. The move towards self-presentation, toward managing how you appear to others, toward monitoring other people's reactions and adjusting yourself accordingly, stops being a conscious choice and becomes an automatic survival response. You do not decide to perform, you just find yourself doing it, and it feels so normal that you rarely question it.
Now bring that nervous system into the digital environment. The woman who learned that conditional acceptance was the primary form of love available to her does not just casually browse social media. She brings her entire relational history with her every time she opens the app. The platform, with its visible metrics and its instant feedback and its public record of who responded and who did not, is not just a communication tool for her, it is a reactivation environment. Every post is, on some level, a repetition of the original dynamic. Here I am, please find me acceptable, please do not withdraw. And every metric is a response to that deeper plea. Not just did people like my photo, but am I enough? Am I safe? Am I going to be left? Let us be precise about what this looks like in practice, because it is rarely obvious from the outside. Women who are posting from safety often look on the surface like they are thriving. Their content is polished. Their aesthetic is cohesive. Their captions are well-crafted. They may have significant followings, but if you look more closely, if you watch the pattern over time, certain things become visible. The content tends to center what will be well-received rather than what is genuinely true. Topics that might generate disagreement are avoided, edges are softened. Anything that could be perceived as flawed, struggling, or imperfect is carefully managed or excluded.
The personal is shared, but only within a very controlled frame. Vulnerability is performed in ways that are socially safe. Stories with resolution already attached, struggles that have already been overcome, emotions that are relatable and not too destabilizing. This is not dishonesty exactly. It is editing, but the editing is not aesthetic, it is protective, and the exhaustion it creates is real.
Managing a digital self that has been carefully curated to avoid rejection is genuinely laborious in a way that is hard to explain to someone who has not experienced it, because the labor is largely invisible and largely unconscious. You are not sitting down and thinking, I will hide this aspect of myself today. You are just automatically reaching for the safer version, the more acceptable angle, the caption that will not make anyone uncomfortable. You are doing it without deciding to, because your nervous system learned long ago that this is what keeps you safe.
Imagine a woman named Daniela. She is confident in person, genuinely funny, someone who holds opinions and is not afraid to express them in private conversation. But her online presence is strangely flat compared to who she actually is. She posts beautiful photos of her travels and her meals, and occasionally shares quotes that sound vaguely inspirational. Nothing she posts is false, but nothing she posts is particularly her. When her closest friend pointed this out once, Daniela laughed it off. "I just do not think people want to see my real thoughts," she said. But when she examined that sentence more carefully, she realized what she was actually saying was, "I do not trust that my real thoughts will be accepted." The platform had become a stage where she performed an agreeable, frictionless version of herself, not because she lacked depth, but because somewhere along the way she had decided that depth was too risky to share. The fear of rejection is neurologically and psychologically one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. We have talked in this series about how the brain treats social rejection as physical threat, but there is something more specific that happens when rejection has been a consistent part of your formative experiences. When you've been rejected, criticized, or found wanting in environments that were supposed to be safe, primarily family, early friendships, intimate relationships, your threat detection system does not just respond to actual rejection, it begins to respond to the possibility of rejection. It begins to generate preemptive anxiety, a kind of forward-projected fear that says, do not put yourself in a position where rejection could happen. And one of the most effective ways to prevent rejection is to never show the parts of yourself that might invite it.
This is called self-concealment in psychological literature, and the research on it is striking. Studies show that self-concealment is consistently associated with higher levels of anxiety, depression, and physical health problems. The suppression of authentic self-expression is not neutral, it has a physiological cost. The energy required to monitor, filter, and manage your self-presentation in a sustained way is drawn from the same resources that your body uses for immune function, emotional regulation, and cognitive clarity. Women who are chronically self-concealing are not just performing online, they are paying a biological price for it. There is another layer here that is specifically about women and the way they are socialized around approval. From a very young age, most women receive consistent messaging that their value is relational, meaning that they matter in proportion to how much they are liked, needed, and approved of by others. Boys receive this message too, but differently and with more culturally sanctioned exits into competition, achievement, and independence as alternative sources of worth. Girls are more consistently funneled toward relational worth, toward being likable, agreeable, pleasing, and emotionally attuned to others. This is not universally true, and it is not biologically determined, but it is culturally prevalent and psychologically documented. The consequence is that for many women, seeking approval does not feel like a choice. It feels like the correct orientation toward the world. It feels like what you are supposed to do, which makes it extraordinarily hard to question. When this socialized approval seeking meets the architecture of social media, the result is a specific kind of digital performance that is so common among women that it has become invisible. The performance of warmth without edge, the performance of ambition without threat, the performance of vulnerability without genuine mess, the performance of authenticity that is, paradoxically, highly curated. You are encouraged by the platform's reward systems to share more of yourself because personal content drives engagement, but you are simultaneously punished via reduced engagement, criticism, or social blowback every time you share something too real, too complicated, or too contrary. The system teaches you to perform authenticity rather than to practice it, and many women have become so skilled at this performance that they have lost the thread back to what actual expression, unfiltered by the audience's imagined response, even feels like.
Think about a woman named Grace. She has been writing online for 4 years. She started because she genuinely had things to say, observations about her life and her relationships and her work that she wanted to articulate and share. In the beginning, writing felt like exhaling. She would finish a post and feel lighter, clearer, more herself. But over time, as her audience grew and the stakes felt higher, the writing process changed. She began to write and then check. Does this sound too angry? Too sad? Will people find this relatable, or will they find it alienating? Is this too much? She started leaving out the parts that felt most true because they were also the parts that felt most exposed. And somewhere in that gradual self-editing, the exhale became a held breath. The writing stopped feeling like release and started feeling like performance. She told herself she was just getting better at her craft, but what she was actually getting better at was disappearing herself in a way that the audience would applaud. The self-analysis this episode is asking you to do is not about shame, it is about honesty. Because here is the truth. Most women are doing some mixture of both. Expression and safety are not completely separate categories with a clean line between them. You can post something that is genuinely you and also strategically timed for maximum reach. You can share something real and also be aware of how it will land. The question is not whether any calculation exists. The question is which force is primary. When you go to post something, is the first feeling excitement, the desire to put something into the world because it matters to you, because it is true, because creating it was its own reward? Or is the first feeling something closer to relief, the sense that if you post this, you will have done the thing that keeps you visible and acceptable and present in the group? There's a simple internal test you can run the next time you're about to post something. Before you hit publish, ask yourself, if this post received 0 engagement, no likes, no comments, no shares, would I still be glad I posted it? Would it have still been worth it? If the answer is yes, you are probably posting from expression. If the answer is no, or if you feel a flicker of anxiety at even imagining that scenario, you are posting at least partly from safety. There's no judgment in that answer, but knowing it is information. It is data about what you are actually seeking when you reach for the app, and it is the beginning of choosing something different. Because here's what expression, real expression, actually feels like. It does not feel like performance. It does not feel like waiting. It does not feel like the held breath of someone who has put something fragile in front of people who might not handle it carefully. Expression feels like exhaling. It feels complete before anyone responds. It contains its own reward, not in the applause it might generate, but in the act of having been honest, of having put something real into the world without shrinking it first. That feeling, when you find it, is so distinct from the anxiety of performance that you cannot confuse the two. The women who eventually build something lasting online, not just in metrics, but in actual connection and genuine influence, are the ones who stopped trying to prevent rejection and started trusting that the version of themselves worth knowing is the complete one, not the curated one, not the one with all the difficult edges filed down,
the one who has opinions that not everyone will agree with, the one who is sometimes struggling and does not have a neat resolution yet, the one who is funny in a way that is specifically hers rather than broadly palatable. Rejection is still possible for her. Sometimes it happens, but it no longer reads as evidence that she should be different. It reads as information about the fit between who she is and who her audience is, and she is no longer willing to change herself to improve that fit. That shift from performing for safety to creating from expression is not a one-time decision. It is a practice. It is something you return to repeatedly every time the old anxiety rises and the old impulse to reach for the safer version kicks in. But it is a practice worth building, because what you are building when you practice it is not just a better digital presence. You are building a more honest relationship with yourself. And that, unlike the temporary relief of a liked post, is something no algorithm can take away. If something in this video made you stop and actually think about why you post, leave the word real in the comments. One word. It tells me you are doing the work, and it helps this series reach the women who are ready for it. Subscribe, because the next episode goes somewhere that follows directly from what we just talked about, and you are going to want to be there for it.